The summary of The Power of Habit. Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. Brought to you by Click-Through College. Part 1. The Habits of Individuals. In the first section of The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg delves into the science behind individual habits. He introduces the habit loop, a three-part process that includes a cue, a routine, and a reward. This loop is the basis of how habits form and operate in our lives. Duhigg begins with a powerful case study of a man named Eugene Pauly, whose memory was severely damaged by a virus. Despite losing the ability to store new memories, Eugene could still form new habits. This case study provides a fascinating insight into how habits are formed and stored in our brains, particularly in a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. Duhigg then introduces the concept of keystone habits. These are habits that, once identified and changed, can cause a ripple effect on other habits. They are the linchpins that hold other habits in place. By changing one keystone habit, you can shift an entire pattern of behavior. One of the key examples Duhigg uses to illustrate this is Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps. His coach, Bob Bowman, helped Phelps develop a series of keystone habits that created a foundation for his training regimen. This included a detailed visualizing routine where Phelps would mentally rehearse every detail of his perfect race. These habits gave Phelps a significant psychological edge, helping him to become one of the most decorated Olympians of all time. Duhigg also discusses how belief plays a crucial role in habit change. He uses the example of the Alcoholics Anonymous program, which relies heavily on the power of belief in social community. The program helps alcoholics to change their deeply ingrained habits by replacing their old routines with new ones and instilling a belief in a higher power and the support of the group. The belief aspect, Duhigg argues, is what makes the habit change stick. This section of the book underscores the point that while habits are powerful, they are not our destiny. By dissecting a habit into its components, cue, routine, and reward, we can understand it better and start the process of changing it. Part 2. The Habits of Successful Organizations. In the second part of The Power of Habit, Duhigg turns his attention to the habits of organizations. He argues that successful companies understand and leverage the power of habits to create effective systems and cultures. The first case study in this section is of Alcoa, an aluminum manufacturing company, and its new CEO, Paul O'Neill. When O'Neill took over, he surprised everyone by focusing not on profits or productivity, but on worker safety. He believed that by making safety a habit, other beneficial habits would follow, creating a chain reaction of positive change. His hunch was correct. As Alcoa's safety record improved, so did its bottom line. Duhigg uses this example to introduce the concept of keystone habits in organizations. Just as with individuals, companies have certain habits that, when changed, can trigger a cascade of other changes. For Alcoa, focusing on safety became a keystone habit that drove broader organizational transformation. Next, Duhigg explores the disastrous consequences of bad organizational habits through the tragic King's Cross Station fire in London. A complex web of bad habits, including complacency, lack of communication, and poor maintenance, contributed to the deadly incident. Duhigg argues that to prevent such catastrophes, organizations must identify and change their destructive habits. The final case study in this section is of Starbucks and how it managed to turn thousands of mostly young, inexperienced employees into a highly effective workforce. The secret, according to Duhigg, was teaching employees specific habits aimed at dealing with high-stress situations. By doing so, Starbucks was able to ensure a consistent, high-quality customer experience across all its locations. Duhigg concludes this section by emphasizing that by understanding and managing habits, organizations can improve their performance and productivity. Just as individuals can remake their lives by changing their habits, so too can companies transform their outcomes by changing their routines. Part 3. The Habits of Societies. In the final part of The Power of Habit, Duhigg examines how habits function on a societal level. He argues that social movements, for all their complexity, are often driven by changes in societal habits. Duhigg begins this section with the story of the Montgomery bus boycott, a pivotal moment in the American civil rights movement. He notes that Rosa Parks was not the first African American to refuse to give up her seat, but her arrest sparked a citywide boycott. Duhigg argues this happened because Park's action coincided with the community's readiness to change its habits regarding racial segregation. The boycott was successful because it spread new habits of protest and civil disobedience among a broad network of individuals. Next, Duhigg examines the power of social habits in the spread of a radio program called The Goldbergs, one of the first soap operas to be broadcast on national radio. The show's creator, Gertrude Berg, knew how to tap into listeners' social habits to create a loyal and engaged audience. Finally, Duhigg looks at the role of habits in social movements, using the example of Rick Warren's Saddleback Church. Warren's church grew from a small community group to one of the largest churches in America. Duhigg argues that Warren succeeded because he understood the social habits of his congregation and used them to spread his message. In conclusion, Duhigg argues that by understanding the power of social habits, we can influence social behaviors and even initiate widespread societal change. This principle applies not only to social and political movements, but also to other group behaviors such as consumer trends and public health initiatives. One of the most compelling points Duhigg makes in this section is about the role of weak ties, acquaintances, as opposed to close friends or family, in spreading new habits. These weak ties provide the breadth needed for a new habit to spread across a large network of individuals, contributing to the propagation of social movements. Duhigg rounds off this section by analyzing the role of habits in the protests against President Mubarak in Egypt in 2011. He argues that these protests were successful because they leveraged the power of existing social habits and networks, but also created new habits of public protest and political engagement. Overall, the third part of The Power of Habit provides a fascinating insight into the role of habits in societies. It illustrates how our collective habits shape our social and political landscapes, and how understanding and altering these habits can lead to significant societal change. In sum, The Power of Habit provides a comprehensive view of the role habits play in our lives, from our individual behaviors to the functioning of successful organizations and societies at large. Understanding the mechanics of habit formation, Duhigg argues, is the first step towards being able to change them. And while changing habits can be challenging, it is certainly within our grasp, offering a powerful tool for personal development, organizational transformation, and societal change. This is a summary of The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business, by Click Through College.